Okay, hey everybody, live right now with Abhimanyu again. So Sunday 5 p.m. Tech Pe Chacha as usual, and काफी interesting topic at this time. I think a lot of people want to understand this, how to handle conflicts, and we will actually towards the end also discuss a little bit about how to handle negotiations. Like if you negotiate some terms better, then sometimes conflicts don't happen in the first place. So we will discuss these things. So I think you'll start off, Abhimanyu, with the very broadly first question itself that people ask, like something is like a disagreement that you said something, I said something, and then sometimes it turns into conflict. So especially at a tech workplace, conflicts can happen everywhere, at home, at any workplace, but at context of a tech workplace, what are some activities or some incidents which are like common places where conflicts apparently start to happen?
Right, right. Actually, first thing often, the conflict or disagreement is often taken as a, very, very strongly negative word. But I think one thing that we all need to internalize is that differences opinion is bound to happen, right? And
Hmm.
of course, it's better to be, particularly if we, when I'm talking about a workplace, it's better that people do have different opinions, because if everyone is just agreeing to everything, then probably nothing is improving, right? No one is
Right.
improving, no one is getting a new perspective. So differences in opinion are bound to happen if it is a group with high intellectual honesty and higher talent density. At any good workplace, you shouldn't feel bad if you do not align with what someone else is proposing, right? uh, Possible vectors of conflict, right? That what are some common kind of conflicts that might arise in a tech
Right.
workplace, that I may talk about. I will start with some very, very obvious ones, right? The first one, of course, might be that, let's say you are reviewing someone's code or someone else is reviewing your code, right?
Right.
Now, of course, if someone have written the code and send it to you for review, it is assumed that that person would believe that this code is right, and that is when the person is sending it for the review, right? And then the purpose of sending for review, let's say if I am sending my code for review 100 times to a reviewer, and every time he just says that everything is great, then this entire exercise is futile, right? Then this is not needed. It
Correct.
is just
Correct.
so like the purpose of code review also is that there should be some feedback, there should be some questions, that why are you doing it like this, why are you not like doing it like this, right? And
Exactly.
when there are, like, the purpose of code review is to raise questions so that it can improve, right?
Right.
And when the questions are being raised, then before we reach to whatever might be the best for the organization, or whatever might be the best approach or the code for the project, before reaching to that, there might be a difference in opinion, right? Like, let's say one person might believe that it is supposed to be done in a certain way, someone else might believe that it should be done in a certain way. And again, we have to internalize that this is a normal process. We just need to figure out that how to manage it in the best way, how to use it in the best way for the improvement, right? Similar, another could be, I think many of the audience might be able to relate to it, that when we are trying to, let's say, come up with a architecture for the project, right? Or be it code structure, be it choice of framework, be it how the architecture should be. Often, I'm sure anyone who has spent a few years, or 5-10 years in the tech industry, they would have seen fights where two people are literally fighting over that, architecture should be like this or should be like that, right? So this is like, we will talk about how to kind of manage it in the best way, how to navigate it in the best way to get the best outcome for your team, right? It's not about whether
Right.
I am right or someone else is right, but what is best for the team. Another possible vector, is often very, very common, is performance related, right? So let's say, like, I will talk it from the two perspective. Let's say I am sitting with my reporting manager, or my team lead, and he thinks that I'm not really performing very well, and I believe that I'm performing very, very well, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's a difference in opinion. This is a very interesting, I think, study in psychology done, research done in psychology, that within a team of people, say 5, 8, 10 people,
Right.
uh, researchers asked everyone individually that what is your percent contribution to the project, right? Like, let's say if it's a team of 5, what is your percent contribution to the project? And when they add it all, it will always be more than 180 or 200%, right? So all of this when kind of almost like, of course, if there are 5 people in the team and everyone is saying that my contribution was 50%, that means everyone cannot be true, right? There might be someone
Correct.
who is right about it, but there has to be someone who was wrong about his own estimation, right? So it's a normal psychology that we always overestimate our contribution to anything, and we underestimate others. And actually, even having the insight to it, that as a individual I am biased towards overvaluing my contribution and undervaluing others valuation contribution, then kind of I can very easily adjust to it, right? That if I feel that
Right.
mine was 50, then maybe I will say mine was 30, right? Or versus if I feel that others was 20, then I should automatically increase that a little bit, right? So these are also some of the possible conflicts. Ownership and expectation mismatch, often this is also very common in the team, that at one point in time I might feel that this entire module should be entirely in my ownership. Why did someone else push a code to it? Or let's say some code got pushed to this one, why did it go without my code review, right? So I expect that this entire piece is my 100% owned by me, everything must go through me. But then the team feels that we all co-own it, right? That it's not that everything has to go through some person.
Right.
So these are also one very common conflict that I have seen in the team. So these are some of the 4 or 5 common conflicts that I have seen.
Right.
Which of course ownership is great, but how do you make sure that your ownership is your sense of ownership is not leading to conflict, right? Having high self esteem is great. You are doing good work and feeling that you are doing great work, that is great, but again it shouldn't lead to conflict that you are massively overestimating and you are not able to showcase that to others, right? uh,
Right.
so these are some of the some few areas or vectors of conflict that I have seen. Arnav, if there is any that you would like to add to the list.
No, I think these are broadly, I think these are the ones that I feel, especially like the second two ones are more because they are subjective. Like you said, like, expectation and ownership. So like somebody thinks that, I have done this work with a lot of ownership, but the manager says that, no, I don't see enough ownership. So what
Right.
does that, having ownership of something mean? And that level of expectation, I think those are, I've seen, a lot of deep rooted conflicts sometimes arise out of it. So to follow up with that question, actually, like these things that we discussed, like say code reviews are there, then performance is there. I mean, disagreements. I think we all agree that it will happen, and difference of opinion will definitely also happen. And otherwise, how would people, like, how would society progress unless there are different opinions
Right.
that are out there? So how do we, like in all of these scenarios we discussed, how do we make sure that the discussion stays healthy and professional, and we stick to the main point and don't let things become like personal in nature?
Right.
So any
Right.
tips for that?
Right. I think these might be pretty generic ones, which often helps with any communication. And some as
Right.
that what are the core points that you have to keep in mind. That like in any workspace conflict, there are some few
Right.
fundamental points that you need to keep in mind, right? And then what are some of the things that you can keep in mind while having the conversation, while having the discussions, which leads to you being able to drive the discussion in a productive direction, even for yourself, rather
Right.
than letting it take a path where it leads to a kind of, let's say, personal animosity, or you feeling bad or the other person feeling bad, right?
Right.
Which definitely, like when we enter, we, like, let's say, when I join a company on day one, no one ever thinks that I want to create 10 enemies here, right? Or no one thinks that I want to be a person who everyone doesn't feel good about, right?
Right.
So first thing is that in 99% of the professional disagreements, first thing that we need to keep in mind is that there is nothing personal about it. So for example, let's take example of the design, the system architecture design difference in opinion, right? Now I might be proposing something opposite to what you are proposing, but the thing is that it's not that I'm gonna get any benefit if my design gets through or your design doesn't get through. There's no
Yeah.
personal, there's nothing I have against you personally, that I just want to. And often we do feel this beliefs does get created that this person always opposes what I propose. But reality is that it's just that that person has a difference of opinion, right?
Hmm.
So first thing that we need to keep in mind is that it is not personal. None of it is personal. It's not about you. Like, deassociate the individual. Like, let's say if you are saying that, let's say if me and Arnav are discussing something and Arnav has a difference in opinion. So instead of saying that Arnav feels so, I should say that the software engineer in my team feels so, right? The
Right.
deassociation from an individual to the role, that this person is arguing for it as his role, not as an
Right.
individual, right? He's not
Correct. Correct.
personally against you, right after this discussion this person might go have a coffee or beer with you, right? But
Right.
here this conflict is for that job function, for that role, right? Second is a very very important factor that I might say is that these, you may call it feedback, you may call it difference in opinion, having this very strong rooted belief that it's an opportunity for me to understand a other perspective, right? So before I interject, or before I, like, see, you are not supposed to defend anything, right? And
Right.
rather you want to hear it out completely, right? That let me first finish everything that other person has to say, like just everything, defer you speaking as much as you can. Like there will be often, let's say if I propose a design and someone is telling that how this design might be bad and some other design might be better, a natural reaction to that is that the moment someone pointed one point, I will start correcting it, right? Don't do that. Like, keep
Hmm.
noting down all the points that person has to suggest. Let them just finish with everything. After that there might be two states where, after having listened to the other person 100%, you still believe that what you are proposing is better than, and their arguments might not be valid, or might even might, like, what you are proposing is still better than what they are proposing. Then after having heard them completely, then you can logically counteract to it. Or other possibilities also, that actually we might, of course we all are humans, we all are susceptible to certain blind spots, and maybe if we hear them out 100%, then out of 10 things that they might be pointing out, five might be invalid, but five might be valid as well. And then you would be able to counter argument in a much stronger way, where thanks for these three great inputs, or these five great inputs that you had to the design, let's incorporate them. Other four inputs you had, they are not really valid because of so and so logic, right? Then there is no possibility of any conflict, right? So it's very important that do not be defensive. Most important is that like these discussions, these conversations are not
Right.
about I am right or you are right. It's about understand their perspective correctly. Either it will help you understand something more, learn something new, or you might be able to logically counteract to that, give a counter argument to that with a lot with much stronger logic. Otherwise, of course, it is also a very common occurrence that the other person feel like, you dude, you are not even listening to me. Let me just finish what I want to point out, right? So I
Right.
think these are some of the important tools that I believe might be good ways to manage it.
Right, 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 right. Understood, understood. I think one more thing I used to also see is like when at a very early stage startups, when there are five, six people, sometimes a lot of passionate argument also comes up that somebody feels this is the correct direction to take, other person thinks that. I think zooming out and understanding that both the perspectives are originally driven by the thought of how to improve the company. You
Right.
know, neither of the person wants that I am better than you. That's not their agenda. They both
Correct.
are thinking that how this company can go ahead, how this organization can go ahead. So I think
Correct.
just taking a step back, and if both the people try to realize that, then also it helps a lot. That no one wants to just show you some show the door or something to you. It's that they are also equally passionate.
Correct.
So that is also
Right.
especially in startups, I've seen a very important thing. So
Absolutely.
now going to a more, I think how to handle kind of a thing. I think let's say if a conflict has happened, right? And conflicts can happen with different people. It could happen with with your manager. It could happen with
Yeah.
your coworkers. It could also happen. You might be leading a team. You might be manager, and you might have some conflicts with somebody inside your team. So one by one, we will actually go through them. So
Yeah.
what should be like the, I think, always the approach is usually different. Like how do you approach resolution of a conflict when it is with your superior and when it is with somebody in your team? There are different approaches to that. So
Right.
especially like if I get into a conflict where it is with my manager or with somebody superior, so then how do I proceed there? What
Right.
can be the solution?
Right, right, right. Uh, like I can talk from my personal experiences and things which worked well for me and things versus things which didn't work, right?
Right,
Uh,
right,
in very early career, of course, we all go through some conflict. Anyone who is super passionate about work and who take pride in the quality of work, it is always possible to enter into some conflict, right? So first thing is that building acceptance to that with your manager, with your colleague, or with your junior, it might
right.
happen, right? The second thing, however, is like, for example, let me talk about the wrong thing that I feel from my career, and maybe you guys can avoid that. That actually, irrespective of whether it is with senior colleague or junior, do not let it go. Let's say I had a heated conversation with my senior, junior, or colleague today, and often we just leave it there, that let's just brush it under the carpet as if nothing has happened, right? My belief is that is not best, right? Because often then we all are humans, and there is a possibility that if we just let it go, there is a possibility of certain feelings of negativity brewing for longer, right?
Hmm, hmm,
So
hmm.
it's always important that you acknowledge and talk about it, right? Talking about, let's say, the manager or superior, the typical conflict might be that I will maybe talk about some categories. One might be related to performance, right? One might be related to the ownership, or it might be related to, let's say, you and your manager have conflict on how your performance have been. Or let's
Right.
say, it's very, very important that you try to set expectations with the manager in a very objective fashion, right? And you push. Sometimes it is possible that your manager is not setting the expectations very, very objectively, right? So for example, if someone just tells me in a, let's say, quarterly or 6 monthly performance review, that you are not performing great, I don't think, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Uh, so yeah, if my manager tells me that you are not doing great, I feel that you are not working hard enough and you are not passionate enough. Now, fine, this is a feedback, but this is not really objective, right? How do you measure my
Right,
level of passion? How do you measure whether I'm working hard or not, right? That is like
right,
it's
right.
hard, right? So push your superior in this domain, that I respect that. I like, first thing is that do not defend. Do not start with defending, because that takes the conversation in a very different direction, where the person is trying to prove something and you are trying to prove something else. Let's say it shouldn't be a conversation that you both are trying to prove a point, right? However,
Right.
if I continuing with the example of performance, and let's say if there's a negative feedback, you should say that, of course, if you are saying, I trust you enough to believe that there must be some reason why you are saying that. That's,
Right, right.
I'm not refuting your base point. However, I want to understand that if you can give me some objective, pointers, that do you say that I'm not working hard enough because there were a lot of bugs in the PRs that I released? And then you can objectively counteract that as well. That in 6 months, all the PRs that I released, pull requests that I created, whichever went into production, I do not remember any instance of a bug being pushed to production, right? Or let's say all the projects which were assigned to me, they were all delivered on time. So on these variables, I'm able to see that I feel that I'm meeting whatever I should be doing. And then ask that objectively, if you can tell me that this was the project where after going to production there were quite a few bugs, or let's say when it went for testing, the QA team had to repeat a lot of bugs, then definitely in my next project I'll try and make sure that that exact number is reduced, right? Or let's say
Right.
my projects get delayed. If you tell me that you were working on this project which was supposed to be finished in 2 months, but it got delayed for 4 months, right? So these are objective feedback. So first thing is that if there's a conflict in opinion, try to resort to objectivity instead of a lot of subjectivity, right?
Right,
Because
right.
when we become objective, then either you will have a to the point feedback that you can say that yes, definitely it's helpful for me, this will help me become a better person, better employee, or better engineer, better creator, right? However, don't leave it at a subjective level. Same goes other way around as well. Like I will probably jump to a conflict with your people working under you. Let's say if you have a bunch of people in your team, people reporting to you, always make sure that whatever inputs you are giving, whatever points you are telling to them. Like for example, telling someone that your code is shitty doesn't make any sense. Like, how do you say this is shitty versus not shitty? uh,
Right, right,
However, giving the feedback, so now the person might argue that you just don't like me, so you just always keep saying that my code is shitty. However, if I tell that, see, the variables, the way you name variables, they are not going to make sense to anyone. So you should make sure that you are naming your variables properly, right? Or let's say the code conventions that we follow in the company, you are not following them. So if any other team starts working on your pieces, then it will be very difficult for them to live up to it. Or let's say your code will not work if there's very high scale, right? So you haven't handled high scale things which we might expect when it goes to production, right? So now these become objective feedbacks. And of course, now on this, if the person refutes, then he will also have to refute with valid points, or the person will say that, okay, thank you for pointing that out. Going forward, I'll make sure that this doesn't repeat. Right. So objectivity, I think, is super important. Uh, what else? I think apart from that, of course, talk about it. Another important thing is that before, when you are starting the conversation, understand the fact that you and the other person are on the same side. It's not that you have to prove him incorrect on yourself correct,
right,
but the purpose is that you want to get on the same page. If there is something that, and be open for being corrected, be open for the fact that there might be, because that is when the benefit is like this thing I say very commonly, that be very very selfish, right?
right,
uh,
right, right.
Very selfish in the sense that try to learn more than trying to teach people. Right. Often this is a
Right,
common thing that we always try to tell others that what you don't know, and let me tell you what you don't know. That way you are giving to people, right? But try
right,
to
right,
take
right.
more than trying to give more. Try to take more,
Correct.
that if they know anything, if they have any perspective that I don't know, then first I will try to absorb that. Right.
Correct.
And then of course, if I also have some stuff that I can also share, if I feel that there is something that they might be interested in knowing from me, then I will share that. But yeah, focus on learning more than trying to preach more.
Right, right, right. Actually, I will add one point here, and I feel this is also very important, especially in this perspective where you're talking to somebody who is your superior.
Yeah.
A lot of people end up bringing their teammate into the picture as a comparison. Like your performance is not well, your manager says, and then like, but my friend, he is also working with me, he's also working X amount of hours, I have not. That I feel is not a good tool to, because if you try to, I mean, it is possible, definitely possible that somebody in a manager in a team has some certain biases. There are ways to sort of go around that as well. But if you start the conversation with the implication that the person has a bias towards, say, some coworker of yours, then the conversation never goes ahead well at that point. Because it's a lot like in school and all, if you try to increase your marks in some question, you come and they're like, मेरे दोस्त ने भी सेम आंसर लिखा, उसको आपने 5 नंबर दिया, मेरे को 4 नंबर दिया. So that way, generally what happens, teacher will probably like reduce both of your marks or something like that. I mean, because it's about your feedback or about you and your superior where you're discussing. There is no point of trying to bring in comparison with other people because you don't know what is their relationship, what they have done something more or less which is hidden from you. You don't know that. So I think that's also not a good way to do these conversations. Just stick to about yourself. You feel like somebody has judged your performance less, you have done better, so you just talk about yourself, don't talk about other people, which is I feel very important.
Yeah.
So moving on to actually the second category of people. So when conflicts happen with peers, not necessarily with superior,
Right.
so there what can be like a good strategy to resolve
Right.
those?
Right. Very candidly, I actually, in my personal career, I rarely faced a conflict with the peers, and because there is often more camaraderie with the peers, and there is a high bandwidth of receptiveness, and
Right,
so generally, in my personal opinion, I feel that this is rarer. Again, however, one thing that as any team you should always try to break away is like within peers. One thing, however, one dynamics at workplaces that I have seen evolving is you may call it trying to find the right word, but like you may say that within peers, people ganging up, right? That often this
Hmm.
perception gets created that these three are very close friends, so they are always going to have each other's back, and the people who are not part of that gang, they will be sidelined, etc., etc. These
Right, right,
feelings, sometimes they might be correct, but often they are totally incorrect. It's more of the social bonding that people have rather than anything related
right,
to the work. So first thing is that try to remove that thinking, and second is even try to be very very conscious that do not like as an individual as well, you should not while of course within team you might be better friends with some, you might not be that great friend, like you might not go to have a beer with everyone in the team, right? That's totally okay. However, you should actively try and make sure that that doesn't lead to any difference in work relations between everyone in the team, right? uh,
right,
so that is super super important. And second is that within peers again, that if you do see some conflicts, uh, often it actually the peer conflicts sometimes is actually led by also the top level company policies. So for example, some of the dynamics which lead to more peer conflicts are one of the appraisal policy that in the older world, actually some of the old companies still employ that everyone has to be fit into a bell curve in a performance report, right? That
comparative performance analysis is
yeah,
done.
the competitive performance analysis, which of course all the modern research have shown that that is a very bad way to measure the performance,
Right,
because it is totally possible that everyone in the team is doing great work, right? It's not that the two people are definitely underperforming, right?
correct,
Historically, in a lot of corporate research, it is also visible by data that following this competitive performance review actually leads to poorer performance across everyone. Because then,
right,
more
right,
than trying to raise the absolute level of performance, people just try to make sure that I can push the other person down and be on top of that, right? Uh, so if you see this thing happening in your team, you should actually call it out. Trust me, no matter even if you are an intern, if you are a junior engineer, even then you can call it out that this is not the practice that we should be following. There's enough research available on internet to prove that this practice is wrong, right?
right,
People
right,
perform best when they are very collaborative with each other, when they are invested in each other's success, right? For example, a cricket team performs best because it's not that if the team wins, then some, like two people still are gonna get punished. If team wins, everyone celebrates, right? uh,
right,
so I think imbibing that culture in the team, bottom up and top down, both is super important. And generally, with the teammates, with the peers, if it is clear that there's a common goal that we all are running towards, then often it leads to, and even if some small conflicts get created, just reminding the fact that we are doing it together, like end goal, that like be it a project launch, be it making our startup successful, that is what we are doing together, and like everything else is just a part of the process. That
correct,
generally
correct, correct.
substantially with the peers, because there is no other relation, with a manager or with your subordinate. There is also other relation exist, which is, let's say, related to their growth in the company, their appraisal, etc. With peers, that doesn't exist. That's a great thing, right? So it is simpler
Right.
dynamics,
Simpler,
much
correct.
simpler dynamics there. Yeah.
Makes sense, makes sense. That's a very nice way to put it. And I think, yeah, I mean, having more conversations itself is also obviously great. A lot of times you're thinking certain things that, with just, talking to them, being better friends, can help there. Now, this is very important. The third part, which is about people who are reporting to you, your juniors in the team, and this is interesting because as you know, I was recently talking to these a lot of engineering leaders for some our own user research. So a lot of these some director, VP, CTO kind of people. I and Anshuman, we were asking them that what is something that plagues your team's growth most, and many people said that people who become engineers, like from engineer to engineering manager, the first thing is that conflict management and empathy within their team is the biggest challenge. They said technical skills is not a challenge there.
Yeah.
Even if somebody is put to manage a team with a different technology they are using, they're
Correct.
able to understand technology. Those things are never a challenge. Challenge is that they are not equipped to deal with problems that are happening within the team. They're not able to give a safe space to people in the team to talk about their issues.
Correct.
So I'm sure there are people who might be here, listeners who might be senior engineers. They would have junior engineers working under them.
Right.
So
Right.
how can they, give them better space to resolve those conflicts, because then more responsibility on you. You are the senior
Right,
person. So
right.
any tips
No,
on that?
absolutely, absolutely. I will maybe share one anecdote here. This was actually once long back, a couple of years back. I had an opportunity to speak to William Tanu Vijaya, who is CEO of Tokopedia. Tokopedia
Hmm.
is, like a company as big as Flipkart, but in
Correct, correct, correct.
Indonesia, Vietnam, etc.
Yeah.
Uh, Amazing person, of course, and a lot to learn from him. So what I asked him was, kind of similar question that how do you, like if you have a large team, you have like large team working with you, and you see that some people are not really performing well, and how do you make sure that they do, right? And his answer was that when you tell me one thing, that do you know anyone? Can you think of anyone who gets up in the
Right.
morning and says that I want to be an underperformer? Would there be anyone in the world? Or someone who thinks that my goal is to get shouted at by my boss, or make my boss unhappy. No one in the world thinks that, wants that, right? However,
Right.
that's happening. It's a natural thing that in any company, in any team, there would be some people who might not be able to perform at the level at which their superiors expect them to, right? uh, so as a boss, as a manager, as a team lead, uh, it's your job to figure out that why this person is not able to perform well, right? Why is the person not able to achieve what I want him to achieve? And
Right.
there will always be a reason that can be addressed. Sometimes it can be a very skill driven reason. So for example, there might be someone who have never worked on the technology on which I have given him work, and he is taking some time, right? And then as his team lead, or as the person, like, the performance of the people working under me is my responsibility. Often, new manager fail to understand that a good manager is who where one can like, let's say a good manager is under which you can put any team and they can make that team very, very productive. If you are not able to make your team productive, then you are failing as a manager, and which is okay. There might be some cases where you will fail, but you have to realize that when you say that X person in my team is not performing, you are also saying that I am not performing as a manager, right? I am
Understood.
not able to
Understood.
equip him enough to perform, right? Because
Right.
that's the job of the manager, right? So first thing is that if you are having conflict with the team, then first thing is that you, like, there is something missing on your side as well. Often, as I say that if you have to let go someone from the team, that's biggest failure is on the manager of that person, right? That you were not able to make him productive or her productive, right? So first thing is that when managing conflict with the juniors, make sure that you are having extreme empathy, right? The reasons might be professional, they might even be personal, right? There might be times, let's say someone is going through a very bad phase in their personal life, and because of that they are not able to perform. So having empathy is extremely important. At the same time, empathy with objectivity, right? So empathy alone, of course, when we are working in a corporate environment, end of the day it is about the performance, right? If someone is going through the bad phase, sure, they can take a leave for a few weeks, or as much time as they want, but end of the day the job is improving the performance, right? uh,
Right.
so objectivity associated with empathy, right? That, for example, you cannot just say that, all right, objectively you didn't do this, but that alone doesn't solve the problem. If the person is facing some situation because of which he or she is not able to deliver, objectivity alone is not going to help them, right? So to your juniors, to your reportees, first thing is, of course, empathy. Understand that what is, like, what caused the conflict at the first place, and
Right.
then remain objective, that these are the reasons. Make sure that you and your reportee are on the same page, that these are the reasons, this is how the reasons might be on the side of the company, on the side of you as well, or it might be on the side of the person, right? It might be, for example, that what you expected the person to do, it was never clearly communicated to the person. Let's say a month back he didn't know that this is what I'm supposed to deliver, and after a month
Right.
you are shouting at him that why did this not get delivered, right? So actually the fault is on me. I should have told more clearly that what I want you to be doing, right? So yeah, like in terms of juniors, I think empathy and objectivity, a combination of empathy and objectivity, is generally is the best way to resolve conflicts.
Understood. Understood. Very, very aptly put, I think. people who would start leading teams should definitely keep that in mind. Uh, so, after this, I wanted to pick up some questions on negotiation, and on negotiation, I think a lot of people immediately start thinking, कि अब तो पैसों की बात है, like how to negotiate better salary. But I think there are other things to negotiate as well. So before we do that, I had a few questions around this topic itself, which I think we can
Yeah,
pick
maybe
up.
let's take some of the questions which are asked in the chat.
Yeah. So B2 has asked interesting question, and a lot of people have this kind of a question in mind. That
Yeah.
does keeping a friendly relationship with manager help in promotion?
One word answer, no. But I will elaborate on that because it doesn't mean that you should screw your relations with manager, right? So basically, see, psychophancy in corporate rarely works. Even if it works in some of the corporates, then if it works in a company, then you should know that you are in a bad company. You are at a bad place, right? Uh, However, of course, keeping warm relations, friendly relations, not just with the manager but with the entire team, does help you. Not because you had better relations with them, but if you have more friendly conversations with them, where they can candidly tell you what they expect from you, or they can candidly point if you are about to make a mistake, not just the manager but your teammates, etc. That will help you perform better. Then you would be able to drive more results, right? And of course, when you drive more results, of course, that is going to help you with the promotion, right? So better
Right.
relations with the manager, better relations with everyone in the team, that will definitely help you perform better. That will not, that alone, if you are not performing, then your just relations are not going to bear you any fruits. I have personally seen, like often in India, a lot of people do believe this. I remember, someone junior in the team bringing lunches to the manager, etc., and trying to do, a lot of favors in the hopes that that will get me, anything better. But when the year end comes, when the appraisal comes, it doesn't really lead to anything. Often, this is also a common talk. We all have been there, where few years of experience, and someone who got promoted, someone who got a better appraisal, we will just do the shit talking that, oh, he was pet to the manager, so he got it. 99.9% of the time, those are all just meaningless banters. No one get, like in corporate, the good thing of corporate is that it is all result driven, right? A company, let's say, a company which keeps promoting people who do not perform but just are sycophants, that company is going to shut down sooner or later. So in a way, it's natural selection. uh,
Natural selection.
it's a natural selection, right? A company which promotes people who are not good, that company cannot survive. If a company is surviving, growing year over year, that clearly indicates that they only reward the top performers, right? But
Right.
yes, of course, good relations help you perform better.
Right. I mean, nothing good can come out of a bad relation. So never have bad relations. That's
Correct.
for sure. Right.
Correct.
I think somewhat in that direction only, and Saurav's question. So,
Yeah.
like how to win confidence from manager who is biased? I would say he thinks somebody is biased. Again, I think being biased
Right.
also sometimes we
Right.
feel somebody is biased.
Right.
So,
So
how
yeah,
about this? Yeah.
first thing I think is that it is, we should have this humility or openness, that maybe my belief, maybe I am biased, that the other person is biased, right?
Correct.
So also keep that in mind. Second is that, see, like winning confidence is something very, very simple. There is no rocket science about it. If you consistently perform, no one in the world, like if we just break it down to pure basic fundamental logic, that any manager, who would they have confidence on? Where they have seen repeated pattern of person being reliable, that if I give a task, the person will be able to finish the task in time with good quality, right? If that is happening again and again, like consider me as manager, right? I have 4 developers. Now there is one developer, every time he delivers on time with good quality. If there is any delay, any questions, I make sure that I communicate it in immediately, instead of keeping it hidden and giving him surprises. So basically, I will become much more reliable, right? That the manager knows that there is no surprise that he will get from me. It's not gonna so happen that I have said that sab ho gaya hai, and then suddenly when he looks at my code, it's all broken, right? So if I have, and and there is other person, let's say, who like every time in his code there are plenty of bugs, or on the last day of delivery he says that it's not done, it's going to take more time. uh, my preference naturally, just as a logical person, because my appraisals are also based on whether the projects that I am owning gets delivered on time or not, right? So just for my own interest, I am going to give it to the person who has been delivering consistently in the past, right?
Right.
uh, so it's very very simple, logical, that any new manager, let's say if there's a team of 4 and there's a new manager, he is not biased towards actually anyone. There's no reason he would be. And again, the natural selection, that a manager who gives preference to an underperformer, he is going to probably going to get fired himself, right? So
Right,
a
right, right. Of
person
course,
who
of
is
course.
making the wrong decisions will not survive, will not thrive. So like, first have this belief that a person who has spent so much time in the industry, have been growing well, like let's say if he has become a manager, he would have become manager because of his past performance, right? And by making wrong decisions, he cannot have given good performance in the past, right?
Right.
So the simple way to win confidence is consistently perform. Make sure that you communicate proactively. Let's say there's a project assigned to you which is supposed to be finished in 5 days. On the second day, if you feel that it's not going to get finished in 5 days, make sure that you go and tell this, right?
Yeah, very
Ideally,
important, very important.
that's super important. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is that we try to hide it till the last day, that main kuch karke, I will stay all night and I'll finish it. If I go and talk, he will shout at me, etc., etc. The sooner you talk about it, the better it is. Of course, you will get shouted at if you tell it on the last moment. No one likes risks. Do not try to be a superman. Like, no one is a superman. The thing is that often as a young engineer we feel that I will do something heroic, and then there will be something amazing. Important part of performing well, being a great contributor to a team, is keeping 100% transparency, that this is what I'm doing, this is what is not working out, I'm trying to figure it out. And team will help you out, right? If there is something that they think that they can help you with to de-risk your project, they will do that. So these might be some of the pointers to win the confidence of the team and manager quickly.
Right, 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 right. That's I think another thing is something I have seen my manager last place I was working. He himself used to say a lot is like, uh, I might have say a feedback call once a month because that's company policy directed by. But if anytime you feel you need to, some feedback you need, every week you want to have a chat with me, please do that. He used to encourage. He used to say that, I can't always, think when you have doubt in your mind that whether I am performing well, not performing well. Whenever you have such a doubt, definitely come and talk to me. And this is, I think, you take more feedback and then you put in effort into whatever that feedback has come. If the person says that, you are you're not writing good documents for your code, so you put an effort into that, you actually put in some real effort into that, and those things are important. Like, you take a feedback and then you act on it and you show that yes, I want to act on the direction in which feedback has been given.
Right.
uh, we have a interesting question about actually conflict management with peers from Ritvika. So she asks that awkward relationship when somebody has been promoted but their friend in the company has not been promoted. So
Right.
how to avoid this competition for and for better mental health?
Right. No, this is I think very real situation, happens often with everyone. If, like, of course, everyone in the team cannot be promoted at the same time. Some will grow faster, some will grow at a slower pace at a given point in time. So I think my input to that would be that a single promotion doesn't make anyone superior, to be very candid, right? It's a long journey of career growth. So a single promotion doesn't really mean that. First we have to kind of inculcate this belief that it's not that if I have gotten a promotion then I am suddenly better than the other person, right?
Right.
It's just one single transaction over a longer journey of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. The person who didn't get promoted 5 years, 10 years down the line, he might be running a company bigger than the company that we all are working at this point in time,
Correct,
right?
correct, correct.
So the world changes very very quickly, right? Like, maybe I can give this example. Back in 2011, in my first job, in the first promotion that was announced after 6 months, My colleague, one of my colleague got promoted, I didn't get promoted. Fine, right? 10 years down the line, actually the market cap of Scalar is more than the market cap of the company where I was working, right?
Correct.
So the journey is, like, it's a single promotion or not. First is that, once you believe in it, that this is no big deal, then of course that will also reflect in your own actions and, your own attitude.
Correct.
Second is that, even with them, like, first you have to emphasize on this, that this is very small transition, this is very small transaction. Second is that if there are any objective parameters where, let's say if they want your inputs on something. So for example, let's say you might be really good with a particular framework, a particular technology, you might have had better ownership of certain module or project, because of which you got promoted and the other person didn't, right? So, always be willing to share it. Like, one thing that I have learned in my own experience as well, that people who are willing to help others grow end up growing exponentially themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Right.
so if there is anything at all that you can help someone learn or get better at, be very, very open, helpful about that. And, very naturally, if you don't have any air of superiority, and if you are very, very willing to help others, then there's no reason anyone would not, like you, right? Like, of course, imagine that if you were not promoted, but your colleague was promoted, but he is super humble and super down to earth, and he's also helping you, would you have any awkwardness toward him? Absolutely not, right? So let's just be that
Right.
person.
Right. 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 Okay. So coming back to actually the other topic, which
Yeah,
I feel is when we talk about conflict, we should also talk about negotiation, because sometimes it can be the preventive step towards
right,
not having a conflict if you have negotiated the terms of engagement properly.
right,
And I wanted to talk about some tips around negotiating, and different scenarios I want to ask
right,
about, because again, very, very usual misconception junior people in the workplace, they think negotiating is just about, I am working for X hours and I'm getting paid Y dollars. So this is the only equation that we need to negotiate in life.
right,
But obviously there are other equations to negotiate.
right,
And I think the first one that we got from a lot of people in the community itself is biggest conflict zone arising is, product requirement versus what is, an engineer thinks that technically
right,
is possible to do or is the correct way to do.
right,
Sometimes people will like, product manager को तो engineering समझ नहीं आ रहा, कुछ भी बोल रहा है and this can't be built, or something like that. People feel. And sometimes, from the product manager perspective also, you can think that, yeah, ये छोटी सी चीज है, मैं बना रहा हूँ engineering को बोलने के लिए, and he is creating some, needless conflict or something.
right,
But at the initial step of the discussion itself, how to negotiate sort of a working agreement when a product has a requirement, and as an engineer you have to build that. So any tips around good negotiation of this
absolutely.
boundary?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, so as actually, well, on the chat, I see one very, very interesting question from Daming. That your nation is one of the more, like I think what he means to say is that your nation has most intelligent people on earth, which is pretty funny. I very strongly believe that intelligence is actually very equally distributed among the entire world. It's just about exposure, and yes, I think. Uh, in India, we do overemphasize on learning and debates, etc. We have a very long culture of debates, so that leads to people bringing in. Very curious that which country, I mean, you are from. Would love to maybe know that. But yeah, coming back to the negotiation thing, right? Let's say negotiation. Often when we hear the word negotiation, only thing that comes to mind is the salary negotiation, right? But that is
Right.
even when you are working at a good place, every other day, every week, and as you grow senior in your career, there will be plenty different kind of negotiations you will have to do with your own teammates, with other teams you are working with, etc., right? And negotiations are not bad, they are a natural step of working as a team, right? So for example, a very trivial example of negotiation might even be that, let's say, when you are in college and you want to buy a bike, or and you want your dad to pay for the bike, right? So even
Right.
there is a negotiation involved, that, right? That first negotiation, that your dad or your parent should buy you a bike. Second is that which bike should it be, how, like, then there's a negotiation between the features and the price, right?
Right.
And finally you would want to get to something which everyone is happy with, right?
Right.
uh, So like there are even in the company at the job, often there will be different kind of negotiations. One example, as Arnav took, that let's say product requirements versus technical possibilities, and not just technical possibilities, also let's say the timelines available, right?
Right.
uh, first, one very very important thing before you enter a negotiation is that, like negotiation is not actually about winning or losing, right? Negotiation is about getting it to a place where you are comfortable with it, right?
Right.
You are totally fine if eventually the state you are able to get to is something which is comfortable for both the parties, right? And
Right.
that is generally the best outcome of the negotiation, where we are able to, like, first thing, like, to have better negotiations in any scenario is that do not make it a war. Negotiations are not war. Negotiation is not about winning or losing.
Correct.
Negotiation is about trying to ensure that the objective parameters that you are comfortable with, they are met as much as possible, while
Right.
also ensuring that the objective requirement the other person is optimizing for are also met as much as possible, right? A balanced state is achieved, right?
Correct. Correct.
Now in product requirement, often, so one very very important thing is that before you enter the negotiation, you should understand the context 100%. Let's say in case of product requirements, before you enter the negotiation, you must have made sure that you have read through, understood product requirements very very well. If there are any open questions, there are any doubts, you have gotten answers to them all, right? uh,
Right.
Second is that never do negotiation as a black box. Often this is a common attitude that techies develop, that yeah, he's a product manager, he's not a techie, or he's a business guy, he's not a techie, he will not be able to understand, so I will not even try to make it try to explain to him, right? Don't do that.
Right.
Trust me that anyone, if you are not able to explain something, generally, this is, I think, a quote from a very famous physician, I'm forgetting the name, but the quote was that if you are not able to explain something in very simple terms, if you are not able to explain something to a 5-year-old, that means you have not understood it well enough yourself, right?
I
uh,
think Feynman, Richard Feynman quoted
Philman,
this.
yeah, this was Finland's quote, right? That
Feynman.
if you cannot explain something to a 5-year-old, means you have not understood it well enough yourself, right?
Right.
So, Billy, trust me, I have worked with plenty of product managers, business folks across the world, with or without technical background. 99.99% of the time, you can always make them understand, right? So, in the negotiation, whatever roadblockers you are facing, make sure you are putting an effort to logically explain to them that why this is not possible, not with passion, not just trying to prove anything to them, but so
Correct.
that they can also get on the same page. See, again, as I mentioned, that if you are working in a team, you all are together. It's not that you are fighting for different causes, right? What I see, what beautiful state it takes when you do that is that often then the product manager or the business person, they will understand, all right, we didn't realize that this particular thing is so difficult technically, and now we can understand why this is so difficult technically. And they might say that, okay, this one is not really the most important part, we can live without it, right? Or we can do it in a different way which will not be so complicated, right? So generally being very open when, like, in the negotiation, it shouldn't be that, no, only this much is going to happen. Explain that, see, this is what we are supposed to build, this is how we plan to be building this, and if we are building it this way, these are the prerequisites that we will have to do, and that is why either it is impossible, or it is very hard, or it will take a lot of time, right?
Right.
Once this entire thing is laid out, then generally it is much easier to come to common grounds, right? Often, again, as an engineer, you should also think product. Feel free to even suggest changes to the product, right? That your end objective, what is the end objective that you are trying to achieve through the product? And here is maybe my little suggestion: if we implement it this way, it will be very easy to implement, and the end objective that you are wanting to achieve will also get achieved, right?
Right.
So generally in product requirement, technical possibilities, timeline, etc., being as open, like, first step is make sure that you have understood it thoroughly, all the way from what is the objective, why this is being built at the first place, and then what is
Right.
proposed to be built, and exactly what are the details, right? And then make sure that you are sharing everything. Do not keep it a black box ki, theek hai, code likhna hai, you would not know how to write code, so I will just tell you that this is how it will be. Don't keep it a black box.
Right. 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 The next question again, that people, like a lot of learners from academy and from community also ask is the same thing is, you know, when you think that something will take X number of days to build, and somebody who wants you to build it says it will take Y number of days to build, deadlines. So how do we negotiate a say number that is comfortable to both of us? And sometimes people, this is a very common vector of frustration of people, that
Correct.
I'm
Absolutely.
getting deadlines that I'm not able to meet. And
Absolutely.
even to some mentees, I ask them that, did you try to talk about that the deadline is not correct, and how did you go about talking about? And I think a lot of people don't even talk about the deadline; they just take it and then they feel frustrated about it, or they feel
Right.
that they don't know how to talk about that this deadline is
Right.
not correct.
Right.
So, any
Correct.
tips for this?
Right. First thing is that you should always know that deadlines should never appear magically, because just arbitrarily putting a date that this has to be launched on this date might lead to massive damage for the company. I can maybe talk about one example from my uh, career. Right back in 2012, I guess, Fab was a New York based fashion startup, and we had taken a lot of slots for hoarding in the metro rails that run within within New York. And then we will be putting these hoardings with certain QR codes that people can scan and place order for the stuff, etc. Right? And of course, every single day of this booking for the hoardings costs millions of dollars, right? And imagine that if these QR codes are not working on the app, then all these millions of dollars are wasted, right? So we had a plan of about 15 days or so to build the backend technology to support that within metro shopping experience. Uh, and then the metro slots are also pre-booked, because of course you have to pre-book them at least 15-30 days in advance, right? And then, like, on the second day itself, I realized that like it's very very high risk that the deadline has been put magically, because that is when we are getting the slots. uh,
Right.
but it's like, with the team that is working on it and with the amount of things that needs to be done, it's very very hard to roll it out and test it out thoroughly within the deadline. On the second day itself, I went that like, I don't know whether changing the slots right now is possible or not, but let's relook at it. Let's break down all the things that needs to be done, how many people can do it, how much time practically it is going to take. And given it is such high stake that like, maybe on the advertising within the entire city, on the all the metros, we might be spending 5-10 cr. So let's be 100% sure that it doesn't get go for a toss, right? uh, and then like, within few 3-4 hours we were able to break things down, and then it was clear that it's hard to deliver it. Within next 6 hours we were able to reach out to the advertising agency, get the slots pushed for 15 days further, right? uh, Now, if we had not done that, and let's say that those hoardings had gone live, that means that company might have lost 10-20 cr on the advertising, where the QR code that people are scanning on is not even working, which not only loses the advertising money, but also creates very bad image for the company, that they had put
Right.
the hoarding and it's not even working,
App
right?
is broken.
Right. So
Yeah.
deadlines should never be magical. It has to be broken down. It has to be, kind of like, one thumb rule that often is also taught in the agile practices is that you have to break it down at a task level, where each individual task should not be more than 4 hours. If you estimate that, I will do this in 3 days, most likely either you will be able to do it in much lesser time, or it might take much bigger time. But when you break it down to a level where everything you can say that this is going to take 4 hours or less, then the
Yeah. Half a
probability
day,
of
half a day logic
half a
is
day,
used. Yeah.
yeah, that like, break it down at half a day level, and then your possibility of going wrong with the deadline is very very low. If even, let's say, someone is pushing you that no no, this is the deadline, this is you have to do, you say that I'm not saying I will not try my best to do it, but let's still break it down. Let's see that is it achievable. Then we might say that fine, like, the estimation says that it could be done in 10 days, and we'll try to get it done in 8 or 9 days. Fine, that's okay. We'll maybe push a little more. But the magical stuff always leads to disasters, so do not believe in the magical stuff.
Right. 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 And I think a lot of people fall into the trap of accepting without sort of putting forward these
Yeah.
points.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, my observation, at least till now, much less experience than you, but I've seen in Indian engineers, it is more.
Yeah.
The ability to say no is less. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
deadline comes, suddenly the onus is that I have to accept it. We
Right.
don't start. The first thought in mind is not whether
Right.
I need to discuss or not. First thought is,
Right.
can I squeeze into it?
Right, right, right. No, and that is a very bad habit. Trust me that in any company, not being able to say no is a negative trait than a positive trait. I will tell you another thing. I will, of course, not name the company. I was speaking to a European employer, a company in Europe, and we were suggesting them that there are a bunch of really really sharp engineers from India. Why don't you hire them, right? And the concern was that the issue that we have seen when we hired Indian engineers is that they never say no. And what that leads to is that whatever task someone has given them, they will say, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then within that time, they will not be able to do it, right? Or there will be a
Right,
lot of issues. And then what would happen is that, then the business might have suffered a lot of losses, right? Versus, let's say, an American or, European developer, he will say that, see, I cannot do this in this much time. Now the
right,
business might say that fine. Then like this advertising billboard example I was taking for the New York. If I didn't say no on the second day that I cannot deliver this with my team in 15 days, that would have led to loss of millions of dollars for the company, right? Along with a bad branding and bad company image, right? So
right,
companies want people who can estimate properly. If they commit, they only commit when they are 100% sure that I can deliver this comfortably. If you are not sure of that, just don't say no for the sake that I want to be lazy. I will not tell why I cannot do it, but I just want to say no. But say no with reason that these are my concerns. Let's address them. If they can be addressed,
right,
then fine, of course I will do it. But if you also believe that those concerns are genuine concerns, then let's plan
right,
accordingly. That's a very important skill to possess.
right, 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 right. Makes sense. Uh, and now, actually, I think coming to probably the part of negotiations which most people might be rather expecting is appraisals, raise, performance review. So, how to sort of work around these, because a lot of times you might have to sort of negotiate in the sense that you have to put your point forward,
Right.
what my performance was. And especially one important topic like people ask a lot is out of turn if I expect a raise. Sometimes it might happen that you have gotten a new responsibility, or you have started working on some
Right.
extra capability, and you're doing it and you feel like that, okay,
Right.
annual raise and all cycle is not there, but I still feel I expect one. So how do I
Right.
approach that? How do I
Right.
put my point forward to my manager and talk about this?
Right. Right. No, so this out of first talking about the out of turn appraisals. Usually, see, depends from company to company. I know that quite a few large companies have very clear policy that we do not do out of turn appraisals. There's a
Right,
certain cycle that we follow, and however, of course, basis your performance, you can expect a much better raise or a big promotion, or maybe not so great a raise, right? However, bonuses, stock appraisals, stock refreshers, etc., often, they might still be added out of the term.
yeah,
And why I will also talk about why companies do that, because actually for a company, as much as it is important to, keep one individual, satisfied, it is also important for them to maintain a parity across the entire team, right?
correct.
Now, let's say when you want out of a turn appraisal, and let's say if you get it, however, you would not want to be the on the other side where you get to know that my teammate mid-year he got an appraisal but I didn't get it, right?
Right,
So
right,
any mature company, any mature HR team is always cognizant of that like there should be parity. Two people who are delivering at the same level, they should grow together. It shouldn't be that one person who is just more vocal, or so then some often companies have very clear policy that this will not happen, like no matter what. um, and however, generally the right way to not have surprises for appraisals, raises, stock appraisals, performance reviews are again that at the beginning of the cycle itself, make sure that your performance metrics are set measurably. One very very
mm,
important thing I would re-emphasize on that measurability is very very important, right? So whatever on whatever parameters you will be evaluated on, or on whatever
Right.
parameter your appraisal is going to be decided on. Sit with your manager and demand that I want measurable goals for me. So that, let's say today I say that on this scale I am supposed to reach at 100. After a month I should be able to ask myself that out of 100, am I at 20 now, or am I at 50 now, or am I already at 90 now, right? And after 6 months as well, when we are sitting for the performance review or appraisal again, I
Right.
should be able to, it should not be an opinion thing. It should be that factually, this is the goal you had given me. Maybe you had given me a goal of 100, I have achieved 80, or I have achieved 120, right? In, as an example, let's say, let's say your goal might be, in context of a techie, like let's say for a salesperson it would be very simple, right? That okay, by, or let's say for a business side it would be very simple, that by this time this much revenue should be there, right? Or by this
Right.
time we should have sold so many units. In any business these might be kind of targets can be given. For a techie, these might be that the projects that I'm going to own, let's say that all my projects have to be delivered within timeline, which we, the timeline at which we start. Second could be that the, like whatever products I'm pushing on production, they should not have bugs, or maybe the bug volume should be less than a certain number, right? So putting these kind of, and if your manager says that yes, or let's say it might be that within this cycle I will be taking full ownership of this module, and in this coming time, like for example, I may give you one example, that for one of my appraisal cycles back in 2012, the goal that was set was, because I was leading the entire website team, that the, at that point in time, the average page load time of the entire website was about 4.2 seconds, and my goal was that if I get it to 3 seconds or low within next 3 months, then they would just say that nothing else matters, you performed well, right? Because
Right.
there are so many moving pieces to take down the average page load time of an entire website. So as an engineer with 1 year 2 year experience leading a team, that's a good framework to follow, right? After 3 months I don't have to have an opinion driven debate whether I did well or not. It's simple, this was a miserable metric, I have gotten it from here to here, and that you have already agreed to, that this would define a good performance.
Understood. Understood. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so this is about, internally, but then when you are,
Yeah,
switching, looking for
that's
jobs,
the
and it's the
most interesting
most
one.
important, interesting question that people would
Yeah,
ask about.
yeah,
So there are
yeah,
layers to it, I think.
yeah,
Whether should we always negotiate, or should we read the room before negotiating a one?
yeah,
And secondly, like what I feel is not a lot of people are clear is like when you enter the negotiation, you enter the room,
yeah,
what things you should have very clear in your mind, that okay, what can I compromise on, what
yeah,
I cannot compromise on,
yeah,
these kind of things. So
yeah,
how do I approach that, especially so that I think the outcome is that you don't get out of that negotiation
yeah,
feeling a sense of regret, or
yeah.
that this did not turn out to be a good negotiation. Because whenever I hear from my mentees about negotiation stories, mostly
Right,
it is about this theme, that I entered a negotiation, but at the end of it, I do not feel good about it. Or I thought I should negotiate, but I did not negotiate.
right,
So, what can be some guidelines around to prevent this feeling later on, that, I should have negotiated, or I did not negotiate properly?
right, right. No, so first thing first, of course, the negotiation, the salary negotiation at the time of joining a company, how it will go depends a lot on a lot of variables that maybe quickly we'll talk about. However, the first point is that, in my opinion, it never hurts to negotiate. When you are being made a job offer, it never hurts to negotiate. There might be some companies who, as a policy, just do not negotiate. That does happen. However, no company will tell you that your offer is retracted because you asked for something else. No company will ever say that, right? So if you like, of course, one thing might be that if you are super content, that they have already gone behind, beyond their capability, and it's something really great for you, and you are already so happy that you don't really want to ask for anything else. Fine, it's not that you have to negotiate, right? But if you see any space, there is no harm, as they say, that there is no harm in asking, right? So if you have anything else in your mind, if you feel that there could be something that could be added to the compensation structure of the offer, or maybe even changing the structure of the offer, or even like adding some perks or not adding some perks. So see, job offer negotiation is not only about the salary. It might also
Right.
be about, let's say, that what are the perks, right? And can the perks be
Mhm.
better? For example, there's a health insurance. Can the health ensure that, does the health insurance also covers your parents or not? If not, we should ask
Right.
that, can I have a health insurance which actually cover my parents as well, right? Of course, salary is an important part, but there are other sides to it as well, right? Second is that, of course, as I mentioned, that like before you enter the negotiation, you should know things, facts at its best. So, for example,
Mhm.
if you are negotiating with a company, have you seen what is the average salary that this company gives at this job, right? Of course, if you know someone there, that might be very authentic source of information, or you can check that on Glassdoor, or you can check that on levels.fyi, right? So, but in general, through some way, you make sure that you know what they do, what are the facts, right? Because when you are equipped with them, then you can put your point better. Again, as I mentioned, that may never make negotiations worse, particularly in salary negotiation. Like let's say the recruiter you are working with, if the recruiter in the salary discussion, if you are able to have that recruiter or the hiring manager on your side, that
Yeah.
he feels nice about you, he feels that yes, yeah, I will try to get you. Of course, the recruiter or the hiring manager is not paying the salary from his own pocket, right? So if you are able to have very warm connect with him, where
Right.
he feels connected to you, that this guy is nice, is not trying to just squeeze out, but he wants to join, and there are certain reasons, then he will be your best evangelist to get you what you want from the from the finance department of the same company, right? So
Right. Right.
never
Right.
make it a war where you are fighting with the recruiter or fighting with the hiring manager about you are not giving me, because it's anyway it's not him giving you money or not giving you money, right? He
Right.
is just the representative. So try to have him on your side, let him fight on your side for the negotiation, and you have to, through conversations, of course, and of course it's just about, sometimes just about talking nicely. For example, thanking them that like, I really appreciate that how much you have helped me get this offer, and I really want to join. Second important thing is that when negotiations break, when a company feels that you will get the offer hiked up, and then you will still not join, you will use that offer to kind of get another offer, or get a match
Yeah. Yeah.
at your current company, and you will still not join, then they will just say that, dude, this is what it is, take it or leave it, right? But if you are
Right.
able to give them high confidence that if you are able to get me what I'm looking for, I'm super excited about your company, I can give you guarantee that I will join. Another factor which often works in favor is that if you are in a situation where, let's say, you are not currently working, and you are already serving notice period, if you can again give them this confidence, okay, sir, give this to me today, I'll join you tomorrow, or I will join next Monday. uh,
Yeah.
that also gives you a lot more leverage, right? Because then they
Right.
know that, fine, it's not that we will match his expectation, and even then he will not join, right? So
Right.
these are some of the kind of things that often helps you negotiate better. Most important is be nice, be respectful. Often this is the biggest mistake that people make while negotiating, that suddenly you take a higher stance. Don't do that. That is not, generally that doesn't lead to favorable outcomes for you from the
Mhm.
negotiation. uh, Second is be equipped with data. Know that what this company's salary structure is. What do they really pay? Are they already paying you more than what they otherwise pay? Because in that case, of course, they will not be. There's no point further negotiating, right? Uh,
Correct. Correct. Correct.
and third is that have the person negotiating with you on your side. Do not make it a war. Let them fight your war internally. So I think
Right.
these
Right.
might be some of the inputs for the salary negotiation.
Right, right, right. I would add one more point is also maybe as people get a little more senior, then this point becomes more important. Is be very clear about what the expectations are also from your role, because a lot of people don't talk about that sufficiently enough before talking about salary negotiations, because it's always about what do you expect out of me and then what I expect to be paid to deliver that. And a lot of people don't put enough thought into it, I feel. And as you get senior, it becomes more important, right? That
Right.
you know that these are the expectations that you would be doing. It will change when you join the company, you work for some months, those things also transform.
Right.
But there should be a general direction, that the vision that this is what we want you to come here and
Right.
deliver for us.
Right. Right. Right.
So unless that perspective is there, you can't come up with a number at your, internally also you can't come up with a number in your mind that, this
Absolutely.
is what my effort would be worth it.
Absolutely. 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 No, so in
Right.
general, any company looks for, particularly if I talk in context of startups, every founder, every hiring manager is looking for people who can take a lot of ownership, right? And if
Hmm.
you are taking ownership, then of course, whatever value is being created at the startup, you will be rewarded with that, right? So,
Right.
show more ownership, that what value you can bring to the company, what kind of things you can own, what kind of value you can deliver. And if there is a company, if you are, for example, interviewing at a startup, and if the founder himself is fully convinced that, if you join in, if you get onboarded, you will be a, you can create so much value for the company, there's no reason they will lose you, for a small amount in the salary. So showing a lot of ownership, what value you can add to the company, what kind of things you can drive, that generally, as I often say, that the best place to negotiate is not with the HR and the salary discussion. The best place to negotiate is during your interviews, where if you can impress the people taking your interviews so much that they can, like, that they just want you to be part of the team, then most likely you will not even have to negotiate with the HR.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I have heard this story, like in Google, they have that 4-point scale for internal interviews.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
generally, if you have been scored above 3.5, and if
In
you are still not hired, then
Yeah,
the hiring manager has to write a letter and explain
yeah.
why you have not been hired.
Why we couldn't
Uh,
onboard this person? Yeah,
why couldn't onboard a person? Because if you got more than 3.5, then it's your fault that you could not hire that person
right.
in an interview. So that impression on interview obviously is a definitely a big signal.
Right.
So interesting. So like great set of points I think we discussed today. Quite a lot of good questions also came up. If you have anybody has any further questions on this topic, comments on this videos would always be there, for that. Uh, and by the way, if you want to discuss maybe also further on this topic, we have our Discord community. And by the way, we just crossed 40,000 active members on that community. So lots of discussions happening. Definitely, if you want to stay, more in touch, so there is, I'll just put that on the screen. So discord.gg/scalar. Please feel free to, join the community. And if you liked the video, then obviously just go press the like button and subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of these 5 p.m. Talks on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. A lot of interesting discussions we have, these Tech Pe Charcha that me and Abhimanyu we are doing every Sunday. Then on every Saturday, 5 p.m., we are having a more technical, in-depth career journey level discussion. We're doing some deep dives on Friday evening, so stay subscribed and tell your friends also about that. And feel free to keep up sending suggestions for topics for the videos. These days, most of the topics we are picking up, they are coming in from suggestions only. So feel free to keep sending them. And
Awesome.
okay, then I guess have a nice day, everybody. Bye bye.
Cool. Have a great day, guys. Stay safe. Bye.